Hello everyone and welcome to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. And this week, it's a big episode. We got a lot of news to talk about, some very important stuff. And then we're going to look at a filmography again, another classic filmography episode, which is always fun. We're going to just talk about Zemeckis. He had a new movie come out. It was an insane movie. I've done a review of it. If you want to check out my review for here, it will be available to check out. But we're just going to enjoy it. You know, look at the career of a story director who made some of the most important films in the history of film, and then kind of got lost in the shuffle of making some weird CG messes that are for nobody and have no cultural impact. And he made like a Pinocchio movie as well. But before we get to that, we do have some news to talk about. A bunch of movie stuff. I think all of the news is actually in relation to a film, which is kind of rare. Not something that happens a lot with us. I'm just setting up the tab, so I'm stalling right now for the news stuff we have to talk about. Some news things that I'm just hoping. All right, here we go. Shall we jump into the news? We're a little bit behind on some of this stuff, but we'll talk about it anyways. First off, Blade has been officially removed from the schedule for Marvel. It is indefinitely postponed. What does that mean? Probably nothing. I can't imagine this is anything for anybody. I mean, I could easily sit here and like make jokes about like how hard is it to make a Blade movie. We've had 3 of them already. It's a vampire hunter. That's straightforward. Like a cool African-American actor in leather slicing up vampires. It's a no-brainer. I feel like because it's a no-brainer, Marvel got lost in translation. They just like, I don't know what we're doing. Which happens. It does happen to some of the best filmmakers and studios out there. You just don't know how to make a thing work. I guess. I don't know. It's weird. But I'm not mad. Like, it's Blade. I'm not going to lose sleep over this movie. It's never one that I was like, finally, we're going to get the proper Blade adaptation. Blade is such a weird character in the comics. I don't know if he's like a fan favorite or if people just like the way he looks and like nobody really cares what happens to him. That's how I felt about Moon Knight for a while, but then they made like Moon Knight really popular in the comic book. So maybe that's what Blade needs. Blade needs that treatment. He should be like a top-selling character. I don't know why he's not. Whatever. Not surprising. So that means Marvel has 3 movies coming out next year. They have Fantastic Four, First Steps, Thunderbolts, and Captain America, Brave New World. All of them look differently uninteresting for different reasons, but whatever. I don't know. We'll see. I don't really talk about like Marvel, DC, and Star Wars films anymore or anything on the channel. I can't. I think 2022 was like the last year I did like a big push talking about any of it. There's a couple movies coming out next year I do want to talk about, and I don't know if I want to talk about them like wholly or I just want to talk about like the ideas that come from them, like Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and Superman. If that Spawn movie ever happens, I do want to talk about that Spawn movie. I don't know. It's very perplexing. But Blade was never one that I was like, oh man, I can't wait to talk about this one with the fans. Like, I don't care. I don't think anybody cares except for Mahershala Ali, and he's, I guess, still on board. Whatever. Marvel also, like, showed their 2025 slate where we got, like, a little glimpse of everything coming to Disney+. I don't really care for any of it. I don't think there's a single project where I'm like, oh, finally, yay. Daredevil, that show has its fans, and its fans will watch that show. And Agatha was this year, so what's the other one? Ironheart could be fun. I think it could be fun, like a street level, you know, child prodigy building cool tech and working with bad people. That could be fun. Wonder Man, I really hope is interesting. I think closer towards the release of Wonder Man, we'll talk more Wonder Man, because I think he's a very interesting character. But the Eyes of Wakanda, What If, Spider-Man No Way Home, or whatever the cartoon is, and Marvel Zombies, whatever. Whatever to all of those. So no Blade. But it is getting a movie, a sequel to Alien Romulus. That's pretty exciting. That movie was interesting. It was okay. And, I don't love it. And I'm like, yeah, this is just like the same thing in a different thing. And that is for some people. We're also potentially seeing like 2 Predator movies next year. One of them called The Badlands, which is going to be released in cinemas, which Prey should have been. And then like an animated anthology that could be going to streaming or in theaters. We don't really know. It's cool. Like, that's the kind of thing that should be happening with this universe, is just telling different stories. And I like that we're seeing that. It's really exciting. Predator and Alien are cool. So like these properties still holding strong in some capacity is always appealing. It's always appealing. So I can't wait to see what both of those look like. Could Terminator be next? Like that next property that's like, yeah, we finally fixed it. Here's a standalone. I know they had like that anime come out on Netflix, and they have a current like Dynamite comic book coming out. Those could sustain it. I feel like moving away from like the, Sarah Connor, John Connor, Kyle Reese of it all is really going to help that brand to shine in different ways. All right, moving away from these franchises to another Disney franchise. Stephen Knight, who was tapped to write the script for the Star Wars film starring Rey, is no longer doing that. Seems like he turned in a bunch of scripts for Lucasfilm, and they're like, we're not going to do any of these. Please stop pitching these. They're all bad. And he's like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. Oh my God. What are we doing, man? I don't know. I honestly feel like we're only going to see one Star Wars movie, and that's because The Mandalorian Season 4 was converted into a movie. There's no way we're going to see another Star Wars film in our lifetime. Lucasfilm has just been too messed up with everything. So 2026 will get the next Star Wars film. Beyond that, I genuinely don't know what's going to happen. Which I know they like announced it on like the Rey movie, and then James Mangold's making like his Cecil B. DeMille movie, and you're like, shut up. These aren't happening. Quit announcing stuff. You just have Skeleton Crew on the deck. Do they have anything tapped for 2025? I don't think they do. Like Ahsoka? But who cares? Nobody watched Ahsoka. I don't know. It's honestly bizarre. You know what? I say that nobody watched it, and then like they have the characters walking around the parks. So that makes me go, I think the people that like watch this show are the same people that are like Disney adults going to the park. It's people that just consume Disney. And this kind of goes into another thing I wanted to do like a video on at some point, or just like talk about it in some capacity, which is like the things that were made for young people that have been coerced or changed to more gradually appeal to either all ages or an adult demographic. Because I collect action figures, and toys should be for kids, like I know when I'm buying like an old school like He-Man toy, like this is aimed for somebody that's younger than me, and I just treat it like it's like, something so valuable. I think Lego has fallen that way too. We'll talk about Lego more in a minute here. And I think like trading cards as well. Like when you were a kid in like the 90s or 80s and you got like a trading card, it's like, look at this. You like put it on your bike or something like that. And you just like had fun showing like your cool rare cards. But now it's like such a collector's market. Not just like Pokemon, but like baseball and all of that. And people just buy these packs and just like, they hoard in on like all of it. So it's like scalpers just like taking all this stuff and like ruining things for everybody. That's one of the things. And I say that too. I think that's what Disney has become as well, just as like a brand. It's less about aiming your stuff for young people. Look, they got their shows for like toddlers and preteens and stuff. But it's more like, how do we keep you a lifelong fan? And that becomes a problem. And I think the way we've treated Star Wars and Pixar and Disney and Marvel all under like the Disney Corporation has become that thing. How do we keep you a lifelong fan? How do we make sure you come to see our Avengers movie? Do we put Robert Downey Jr. back in it as a new character? How do we make sure you are sticking with us for Star Wars? Do we just let Dave Filoni do his thing? A thing you already liked in animation. And it's hard to let like new voices breathe in here. An Incredibles 3, a Toy Story 5. You know, like we just rarely give you the chance to do something different. Anyways, that's a conversation for another day. Is David Fincher making a Squid Game movie in like the US for Netflix? Well, let's pray to God he's not. I don't want any of this. Like, David Fincher, please don't get caught up in the Netflix stuff. Like, I know they are giving you money. They have treated you poorly, baby. Mank and The Killer are two great movies. I would have loved to see them in theaters. I did see The Killer in theaters. But I'd like them to have a bigger run in cinemas. Please don't make a Squid Game movie for Netflix. First off, Squid Game it's such a complicated show because it's like a fun idea, but I think people take the wrong lesson from it and they don't really look past like, what would I do in this situation? That's just like the masses. I think a lot of like film literate people are like, I know the cliches, I know what we're saying here about capitalism and society and stuff and whatever. Just making that American is stupid. The fact that it's Korean really helps that show like thrive, and just trying to redo that, you're just doing a Mr. Beast video at that point. Who cares? Who cares? That's so dumb. Okay, I don't want to talk about that anymore. The Wayans, remember the Wayans? Remember those cool guys? You probably know them from like the 2000s. They're doing a Scary Movie 6, everybody. We're getting a Scary Movie 6, that franchise that is funny and boring at the same time. I have nothing against Scary Movie. I'm so glad that those films like got made. I think that like type of parody film is like a lost art form where everything just becomes so stupid, and when we try to like do that humor it comes so like pastiche and lame that it's just people making fun of something, and it's not actually like in genuine interest. But this is the perfect time for a Scary Movie 6. Think of all like the weird horror movies we could talk about. Think about how we could just riff on Scream as a franchise right now. That is so cool. You can imagine them doing something with like the Black Phone, or with the Babadook, or like a Nosferatu parody or something like that. Or something like The Lighthouse, but it's like Tim Robinson. You know, I think there is so much rich history here. And by the time they do this, I think we will definitely talk about the Scary Movie films, because I genuinely like most of them. It is an interesting idea. It's stupid as fuck, and there's some stupid like potty humor, but that is the case with almost everything. I can't be mad at it for doing its like thing over and over again. It is such a fun idea. I'm so glad it is happening. I like those guys. So do it. Let's make a weird movie. That is so cool. It's so cool. And I thought that would be like the most interesting thing we're going to talk about this week in the news, but something more interesting that's more bizarre actually came out too. So this is an article from Deadline. Jake Kasdan, Patty Jenkins, and Joe Cornish set to helm live-action Lego movies for Universal. Okay, so the Lego Group is under a new deal with Universal to make 3 live-action movies with the directors I just mentioned. The plots of all 3 have yet to be, detailed, and you're just like, okay. So Kasdan will be directing the first movie, and let's see here. It doesn't say anything about it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to okay, so he did the Jumanjis, so that's something. First off, you say like a Lego live action movie. Does that mean you're taking like the premise of Lego characters and making them live action, akin to like the Minecraft movie? Or is it like you are like live action directors who are like doing stop motion with Lego style stuff? Because I think the appeal of a Lego movie would be the Lego pieces. But these are like 3 people who don't normally do animation. So, Jake Kasdan, a director who does stuff. Joe Cornish, a shame this is what you're doing. He directed Attack the Block, a good movie. Is that the last film he made? I thought he made one more after that. I can't really remember, but that's very interesting. So Patty Jenkins with I guess producer Jeff Johns is working on a film too, and it's kind of cool. And Cornish is doing one. It's a draft with Heather Ann Campbell, who worked on Rick and Morty, which is fun. I don't know. This is so weird because I'm like, these are big names. Why are we making Lego into this thing? And then like I said earlier in the episode, we have to make Lego for everybody. So making stuff for adults. I have nothing against Lego. Like, if I had more time and money, I could definitely see myself getting into Lego because I'd love to build like my own miniature city. I think that would be so fun. But I've kind of like rest my laurels on the hill of action figures and comic books, so I'm not doing Lego. But live action, like, would that be like taking the characters from like Lego Ninjago and putting them into like a live action movie? Do Lego characters like, what would be sick? If like a Lego guy came to life and was human. That would be fucking awesome. That's an idea. I hope one of them is doing that. It's probably not Patty Jenkins. Like, what happened, Patty? You were going to do a Star Wars. Your Wonder Woman movie wasn't good, but it wasn't that bad. Damn. Kind of fell off. A shame, really, but I'll get over it. Also, do you want a Game of Thrones movie? Of course you do. Why wouldn't you want a Game of Thrones film? Well, it could happen. In cinemas? Probably not. That's all I have to say about Game of Thrones getting a movie. I say, who the fuck cares? Not me. Stupid idea. And our final piece of news comes straight from Toho themselves on their social medias. They put out a cryptic message. It's like, emergency broadcast. A new Godzilla film is in the works. Director Takashi Yamazaki is returning, the director of the incredible Godzilla -1. A fantastic film. Fantastic film. He is returning to helm the sequel or just another Godzilla movie, which is awesome. The Academy Award-winning Marvel Godzilla -1. Obsessed with this film. I gotta watch it again. It's been a while. I've seen it, I think, 3 times now. I gotta watch it again. Just an insanely good movie. So much fun. And doing a sequel, yeah, let's see what you got. Let's see what you got for me. I'm all for that. Very exciting. Okay. That's all the news we got. Just a bunch of movie stuff. Out of all of that, I guess the one I'm most excited for is a Godzilla movie. And then a Scary Movie 6. But the rest of it, it's good. It's all good. Stuff is good. We'll take a quick break and when we come back, let's talk about a director. Zemeckis. Robert Zemeckis. That's right, folks. He is a legendary filmmaker making some of the most interesting and monumental films for an entire generation. I don't know if it's for my generation because he hasn't made good stuff recently. I'm not trying to be mean. I do admire the guy. I respect him. I think he's interesting. He's also, like, right on that cusp of, like, the film school generation. Like, if the guys who are George Lucas and Spielberg and De Palma and Scorsese are, like, seniors in high school, he's like a freshman. He's, like, right behind them, kind of in his own lane. He's not as, like, old as those guys, but he's still an old guy who has, like, those views and tendencies. A lot of those guys I just said are like from the 40s. He's from the 50s, like there's stuff there that is of similar interest, but he's also not like, I don't know, as like cautiously like nihilistic in his films as those other guys. he's kind of more like, let's have fun here. Let's enjoy our time. I'm going to make stuff for kids and just have a decent little experience in our lives, you know? We'll make stuff for all ages, we'll make stuff for adults, and you know, we'll advance the future of cinema. Which is like another thing Zemeckis has always been about, is film preservation and using different tools and studies to make different types of movies and use different ideas for whatever. You know, he's like Ang Lee, where it's like we'll develop different technologies. His is more like the digital effects, you know, how do we use like camera tricks to like de-age people? How do we take like a CGI model and render it in a specific way? Ang Lee's about like frame rates and cameras, and you have a guy like Zemeckis who's like, I want to make the ugliest movie ever, but if I make it ugly now, in 20 years, somebody can make it look good. His run from like Polar Express to A Christmas Carol, we'll get to it, but we don't go back there, do we? We don't go back to try to make those anymore, which is probably for the best because they're bad. They look bad. They're not good. Oh, he's such a weird filmmaker because you're like, you made perhaps the most important film ever made in the history of film that kind of like becomes an instant icon. And that's one of your earliest films. Like your fourth film you ever make is Back to the Future. And that kind of like gets you the cachet to do whatever you want throughout the history of film. And you make so many weird choices. None of them are really interesting. Now, this list is full of good movies that I enjoy. I don't think any of them are like fully bad, except until the 2000s, post Castaway. I don't like, okay, we'll get into it. I don't like Forrest Gump either, I was just going to say, but I think he's an important filmmaker who wants to celebrate the film and try new things and do different stuff and technologies and all that shenanigans and whatever. He's interesting. He's kind of fun. I'm always curious to see what his next project is going to be. Does he have anything in development right now? Before we get into that, let's look it up. What is, oh my God, if I can spell, what is Robert Zemeckis' next movie? Let's see what we got here. Well, we know it's here. Is there one after here? Not Back to the Future 4, obviously. He did want to do the musical, blah, blah, blah. I guess it's whatever he's given, because, I don't know. I said this in my review for here. I don't know if he gets movies greenlit anymore, or if, like, he just does jobs people want him to do. Like, I'm sure it's a mix of both. Like, you made Back to the Future. You made Forrest Gump. You made Welcome to Morrowind. I'm sure all of those give you some cachet to do certain things, but I don't know if any of them are, like, fun. Okay, let's get into it. He has a career that has been going on since 1978, when he made I Want to Hold Your Hand. Have you guys seen this movie? I actually enjoy it quite a bit. I haven't seen it in years, but it's, like, a really cool, like, comedy about a bunch of girls trying to get, like, to see the Beatles in concert. It's really fun and loose. And it's a really good energy that kind of like dictates his whole career, which is just, we're having fun. It's kind of silly. Everything's bonkers. The world's looking weird and, you know, silly and creepy. He's good at it. I like it. It's a fun little movie. Easily one of the better ones of his career, even if it is his first one. It's just a nice little film where it's like, look at these girls just trying to have a good time. And who can blame them? You could easily remake this today. Of course you could. It'd be really interesting and fun, and you could do something quite interesting. So then his next film is 2 years later called Used Cars. This is the, it's Kurt Russell, right? Yeah. This one has some insane sequences too. But it's another dark comedy. A devious salesman working for affable but monumentally unsuccessful used car dealership. Luke's principal rival. It's just like a guy trying to sell cars. It's like a weird comedy, which makes sense. And like, that's also kind of his thing too. It's just like nostalgia for stuff I like in a time where things are different, you know? That's his whole career. His whole career is essentially look at the past. Isn't that cool? And it's not just like when he was growing up, but that's a lot of like, Beatles mania when you're like a teenager in the 60s and used cars. Like, oh, is this a fun job? Where am I stuck here? Romancing the Stone is his next film a couple years later, which is an adventure film with like Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner and Danny DeVito, and it's good. It's definitely ripping on like the old serials that you'd see at the time. Of like, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna throw you in like an Indiana Jones pastiche, but we're not actually gonna do that. Another thing from a different time period. It's kind of set in the modern time, but you know what I mean. It's like throwing it back to old movies. His whole career is like we have to go back to when things were different. It's fun. I like Romancing the Stone. It is quietly just enjoyable. Very underappreciated. I think because of like the other monumental films he makes in the 80s that nobody really considers Romancing the Stone. But it's not bad. It's really interesting, really lighthearted. It's Michael Douglas like showing you he can be like a sexy movie star, actiony lead guy, which is not something he did often. And he is surprisingly good at it. Of course he is. He's Michael Douglas. He can do no wrong. Then, the following year, 1985, Robert Zemeckis makes a little film called Back to the Future. I have debated numerous times on this channel if we do Back to the Future for Movie Tales or in an episode of the GeekWave. It's so talked about, so revered. Everybody has heard of this movie or has seen it. It's one of the most important films ever made because it shows you like how you do genre storytelling, how you get actors to play characters and have them really feel fleshed out. Every line is iconic. Every single thing that happens is iconic. It's a movie about a guy's mom trying to hook up with him. That's really fucking weird, but that's what happens in this movie. Why is this a blockbuster? Why did this become such a high-grossing film? I'll never understand that. And I say this all the time too, but you could never make Back to the Future today because this premise is too stupid. This kid is friends with a nuclear scientist. He's like disgraced or something. Turns a DeLorean into a time machine. The kid goes back, learns that his mom is horny and his dad is a pervert, and he has to get the two of them together, or him and his kids, or him and his siblings, I should say, will never be born. But mom thinks he's hot, and the bully is a rapist, and it's so weird. It's so weird. But it's a good movie, and it looks good, and I have a fucking poster of it. Like, it's just become such an icon. I know people who've dressed up as Marty McFly this year for Halloween. It's crazy that this still holds on. Like, it's one of the iconic films that we'll never touch again until Gale and Zemeckis die, and then instantly they'll do another one. That'd be a fun episode too, pitching like what do you do for like a Back to the Future remake or sequel or reboot or whatever. I think we'll do that at some point. That'd be a fun episode to talk about. And it became a trilogy. We'll talk about those before we get to the other movie. Back to the Future Part 2, what if we went to the future, but now that future is in the past. It's almost a decade ago that they'd go to 2015. Oh my god, and nothing looks that good. That movie's also iconic. Very strong movie, looks really fun, people having a good time with it. And then Back to the Future Part 3, what if we went to the Old West? And just did all the same jokes, but it's in the past, even further in the past. I get it. That one, it's good, it's serviceable, it gets the job done. You kind of just nailed it, though, with the first two. That, like, yeah, you should just do the next one, and it's never going to be as, like, well regarded or remembered, but people will still enjoy it and appreciate it and want to talk about it and all that stuff. A good trilogy. Like, all of them are like 7 out of 10 and above, and they're all iconic and remembered. You could buy action figures and Funko Pops and merchandise up the wazoo. I still remember in 2015 when I was in high school, if you want to get like a sense of how old I was so pissed because it was like the commemorative anniversary, and like Pepsi was doing like a collab with like Universal, and they were selling like limited edition like the Pepsi cans or like the bottles or something from the movie, and I was like, I gotta get these. I want to look it up. Pepsi cans Back to the Future. Because I was so excited to I want these so bad. And I was waiting online. I was like, I'm going to get these. I'm going to buy like a set of these. It looks so fun. And then I had to go to school that day and I got so pissed off. So I'm like, you kidding me? I just want this cool future Pepsi and I have to go to school? If only I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have went to school. I would have got this stupid fucking Pepsi. It looks cool. It looks cool. Oh, I don't know. I like soda stuff like that too. But that's like my favorite part. That's what I remember about that movie. And like hoverboard, Trump, allegory. What if Biff was Trump? Remember? What if that was the future? God. Oh my God. And this episode's coming out the day before a very important election in America. So, God help us all. Oh my goodness. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But before Back to the Future Part 2 or 3 come out, there's another film that Zemeckis works on, which is probably in my top 15 favorite films ever made. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? A weird animation blend that just has animated characters walking around in the real world and then Bob Hoskins going to an animated world. It's the perfect film. It's my favorite type of noir story. It's taking a concept of noir and sticking it into a different thing. I've always said you should explore this kind of story, taking the cliches and tropes of noir and throwing them into other things. Animation's perfect. Puppets is perfect. This movie gets it. Old school, cartoon star is framed for something he didn't do. We have to get Bob Hoskins in to help him. You have Warner Brothers and Disney characters on screen together. It's amazing. A great movie with a great cast. I still think about Jessica Rabbit all the time. That's such a cool character. One of the only photos I ever took when I was in Toontown last time, which would have been 8 years ago at this point, was a photo of the Jessica Rabbit, it's a magazine inside of Roger's house. Or is it Roger's house? It's somebody's house. And I took a picture and I'm like, that's all I care about. I love that movie. It is perfect to every detail, and we could go into deeper on it in another video, but it is probably the most impressive thing that he's ever made and kind of defines what his career is going to become. Animation blend with live action, CG characters, all the nonsense. In 1992, he makes Death Becomes Her, which is a movie we'd never make today. It's great. It's so much fun. Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, just together, just doing some cool stuff, fighting with magic and cool ideas. A really fun, silly movie that shows you Meryl Streep can do comedy. I feel like she doesn't get to do a lot of comedy in this era, and she was so incredible. And then, a couple of years after that, he's one of those guys that's considered let's do a movie every 2 to 3 years. 1994, we get Forrest Gump. Now, when I talked about the movie here, which I did a review on, I talked a little bit about Forrest Gump. It is the other part of Zemeckis we have to talk about, which is I'm a nostalgic boomer. I love looking back on the 60s and 50s and being fondly embraced for that stuff. Back to the Future, he goes back to when Zemeckis was a kid. In the future, things are different, but even old cartoons from the 40s appearing in there, Used Cars and I Want to Hold Your Hand, Death Become Her, is maybe the most outstanding of the bunch. But Forrest Gump's look at how cool everything was when Elvis played, Vietnam, that kind of shit, It's not a movie that holds up. I don't think anyone of my generation or younger is going to be inspired by what this does. I think we're going to look on it not fondly, not interestingly, and have nothing to really comment on. And that's okay. These types of things can happen. It's a lot like American Beauty, another movie that is in this vein of suburbia used to be so pleasant in the 90s. What happened? Look at everything we're doing, But it's okay, we get it, fucking shut up and move on. And Tom Hanks gives a very interesting performance that I'd wonder how people react to it. Because this happened 30 years ago, I don't know if you could make this today. You know, it's one of those things, like, how far are people willing to go with these things? We don't really make movies where actors play, like, mentally challenged people anymore. And that's probably for the best. Oh, Forrest Gump's such a weird movie. I like Bubba Gump's shrimping seafood restaurant, whatever it's fully called. It's good. I like seafood. There's only one Bubba Gump's near me. It's in the city I live in. I don't go there regularly, but when I go there, I don't have a bad time. It's pretty exciting, right? I like shrimp. Shrimp is good. And if that's my takeaway from Forrest Gump, so be it. But nobody does it anymore. Nobody makes references from Forrest Gump anymore. They do so more for, I think even Death Becomes Her. Was it Adele that dressed up as like the Death Becomes Her Meryl Streep this year? I think it was, yeah. So after Forrest Gump, he does Contact, which is like Jodie Foster doing a fun drama about science fiction and like, ooh, what's in space and stuff. Did we contact a thing? More of like that just classic sci-fi era stuff that he's known for. It's good. It's a good little movie. It's kind of fun. The 90s are pretty good for him. You know, you make Forrest Gump, that's a blockbuster hit that everyone's like, you can do whatever you want now. A lot of like the cachet he still gets today is from Forrest Gump. That's 100% true. The year 2000, he has two films. What Lies Beneath, which is like, is that the Harrison Ford one? Yeah, Harrison Ford, Michelle Pfeiffer. It's like a weird horror movie. What's going on in their home? Is something going on? Is there a ghost in the house or is she losing her mind? Yeah, there's a ghost. This used to make money, by the way. This movie made almost $300 million at the box office. Imagine that happening today. Just to show you how far things have changed. There's no way in hell a movie called What Lies Beneath would make $300 million at the box office in 2024. The closest you get is Longlegs topping off at 100 domestic. Is that what happened? Or was it 100 worldwide or something? I can't remember. Never happened today. And then Castaway. What if Tom Hanks was like stranded somewhere? What would happen? Well, you'd get more iconic shots of him screaming Wilson and stuff like that. Good movie that, again, never make today. This movie made $430 million at the box office. Can you imagine that happening today? This was only 24 years ago. It would just be insane. It would never happen. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. What if Tom Hanks lost a bunch of weight and was stranded on an island and that was the movie and it made money? And he's like, cool, I just had two huge hits in a row. I'm still reeling from Forrest Gump winning me a lot of awards. I'm doing fantastic in my life. And Contact wasn't like a bad movie. It didn't like lose money. But you have a lot of hits in a row and you're like, what do you do now? Once you have the accolades and people seeing like, you are the director of our times. You're 50 years old. The year is 2000. You are 48 years old. So you're like nearing your 50s. What are you going to do? Are you going to just continue on the path that is working for you? Or are you going to try something new? Well, he's going to try something new. And we get the 3-film run that is insanity personified. The Polar Express, the weird animated movie that has really bizarre aesthetics and looks crazy. That was super freaking expensive. And, oh man. I've only seen this one once, and that's when I was like the age when it came out, which I would be under 10. I have no fondness for it. And sometimes you see the clips appear online and you're like, yeah, this is something I'm glad we don't do anymore, is go down this route. But then he followed that up with another movie in the same vein, with a screenplay by Neil Gaiman for a Beowulf movie. But this one's like, it's not for kids. There's going to be some effing and jeffing, and it's going to be adult and crazy. And you're like, okay, sure. Are you familiar with the Beowulf story? Do I have to explain the Beowulf story to people, or are you aware of what that is? I feel like people are aware. Beowulf and all that shit that goes on. Grendel is in there, and you're like, ooh, fun, and ooh, whatever. But what if it looked bad? And then we never really attempted it again? Have we done a Beowulf thing since this? I don't remember. Truly, we must have tried. Ray Winstone is like Beowulf lead. Anthony Hopkins, Robin Wright, Brendan Gleeson, Tom Malkovich, Crispin Glover, Alison Lohman, and Angelina Jolie. What are we doing with our lives? Like, this was crazy. It was $150 million. Like, this weird-looking Beowulf film from Neil Gaiman and Robert Zemeckis. Are you happy with this? I wouldn't be happy with this. It looks like shit. And then A Christmas Carol. Let's follow it up with one for kids with Jim Carrey. It looks fucking awful. Genuinely looks terrible. I don't think I've ever seen this version of Christmas Carol. When it comes to like various Christmas Carol stuff, I kind of just check out after Muppets Christmas Carol. Like, that's the only one I need. I don't really need any other ones. I've seen stage productions of it. I think like a high school production, I've definitely seen like a more professional one. But I don't need other interpretations of this. So this one, I had no interest. Even at the time, I had no interest in seeing this because who cares? Who cares? We know what's going to happen. So that run is insane. His 2000s are crazy. He takes a little bit of a break, and then in 2012 we get Flight, which is the Denzel Washington was drunk on a plane movie, and that makes a lot of money too for a low budget. And people were like, "Oh shit, he's back." Oh, was he drunk or was he high? I can't remember. Airline captain Whip Whitaker snorts cocaine to stay alert after a long night of drinking in his Orlando hotel room. He pilots Self-Jet Air Flight 227 to Atlanta, which experienced severe turbulence during takeoff. Meanwhile, amateur photographer and drug addict Nicole Nagan buys heroin and has an argument with her landlord. She suffers an overdose after injecting herself with the drug. What if that was a movie? And it's fine. I don't think it's bad. You know, Denzel was nominated, got Best Original Screenplay nomination. It's fine. We're all happy. Silly little movie. Works. This isn't one that Zemeckis wrote. I think he just directed. Unlike some of the other crazy shit he worked on. Then he does another kind of long break and makes The Walk. Do you remember The Walk? Do you remember when The Walk was like a big deal? I remember when The Walk was a big deal. I was like, because I was with my father at the time, I'm like, Dad, I want to see this movie. We have to go see this. And he's like, I guess, sure. Remember when Joseph Gordon-Levitt played like a Frenchman? He's like, hello, welcome to my movie. I'm going to walk across the Twin Towers. And you're like, okay. I guess you could do that, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But it was more about like the technology of making it look like you're high up on like a high altitude and it's just like a guy on a tightrope in some place. Look, it looked good. Very interesting. Works more for a theater like screen than it does for like the home. But it's a cute little movie that I don't hate and I thought was interesting to look at the very least. And that's the other part of this career we're going to come into. Let's make stuff that looks good. And then he just makes Allied, which is like, what if there was something happening in the war times? What would that look like? Casablanca, I love that movie, says Robert Zemeckis. I'll produce something from that era. Perfect. Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard. What if they were in love during the war? And you're like, yep, what if? Guess that'd be interesting. And it did okay. I don't think it was like the highest grosser of like of his time here, but Allied was fine. It's a cute little movie. Welcome to Marwen is next, and that one is crazy. Like, what if a guy was beat up all the time, and like women in his life protected him, and he made little dolls about it? Look, I'm underselling it. This is more like a tearjerker movie compared to like the last ones. It's a weird movie though. Weird little movie. And I don't know if it's good, but it's definitely got something to say, you know? Steve Carell in like that, was this post Foxcatcher? Yeah, it would be. where he is like, I'm a serious actor. Look at the roles I can take. And you're like, yeah, we know. We don't want to see you do them, though, Steve Carell. We don't care for it. Nobody saw this movie. It's a weird movie. We do like sequences where the dolls are like alive and stuff and whatever. Then we get trapped in some just like, well, it's the pandemic. You're not going to make big movies anymore. So why don't you do the reboot of Roald Dahl's The Witches, and everyone will forget you made that. It's going to have Anne Hathaway in it. Nobody saw it. It went to HBO Max. Not a real movie. If I was Zemeckis, I'd end my career before that happened. Then he made Pinocchio for Disney+. Not even one of the Disney reboots that's good enough to put in cinemas. And I watched it, and I hated it. And I don't like the first Pinocchio movie either from the 40s. I don't like either of them. But this one sucks, and Tom Hanks looks stupid. Dumb movie. And this is where you're like, where'd it go? You lost it. Allied is a weird movie to make. But Marwen onwards, you don't have the juice anymore, man. And then just this week, Here is released, which is a film I talked a whole bunch about. It's not that good. There's a lot in there. It's more like depressing and sad about like the lost potential of being a person than his other works. But it's not good. It's just so sad, which happens. It's crazy. What a weird filmography. Like, he did a little bit of everything. So if I were to tell you like what movies of his to watch, I Want to Hold Your Hand, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Death Becomes Her, What Lies Beneath, Flight, The Walk, Welcome to Marwen, ? I think that's it. The best one is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. You make that movie, you win in my books. And Back to the Future, look, you've seen it. I don't have anything else to say about Back to the Future. You've seen it. It's good. What a weird career. What's up next? I wouldn't be surprised if it's nothing. Because unlike Spielberg or Scorsese, you're not getting the awards accolades anymore. Did he do television? Has he done television recently? Not really. Hasn't really done anything for television. Okay. That's fair. I mean, what else are you going to do? Okay, good for him. Anything else? What's he? No, nothing really. I don't know what's next. Not really concerned. Should we look up the unproduced projects? Let's see. Any modern ones? Macabre remake, who cares? Gump & Co., no thank you. Obviously, Forrest Gump 2 has been talked about forever. But let's not do it. On January 10th, 2020, it was reported that Zemeckis was in final negotiations to produce and direct the sci-fi thriller Ares for Warner Brothers from a script written by Javina Robertson Warrett. I don't know what that would have been, but whatever. He was also going to do The Phantom Menace and Superman and The Flash at one point, a Wizard of Oz thing. Thank God none of those happened, because that would suck. But hey, that's Zemeckis. There's some gems in the shit, but that's just filmmaking, isn't it? What's your favorite Zemeckis movie? It's probably Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's the only real good one. Thank you all for watching this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.